Hello, ladies. How are you today?
I am good. I am good.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, mon ami, mes amis. Bonjour, mes amis. Ça got fait, Lisa.
Oui, monsieur.
See? We're already started, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode. So on this topic, ladies, I wanted to talk about emotional feelings. Do we deal or not deal? Sac passe. You're listening to Unfiltered Limin with BLT. Every week, we will reflect on our journeys on trying to navigate between our parents' traditional culture versus American culture. We are your hosts, Bertide,
Lisa,
and Terry.
No one's talking. So let's get unfiltered. What that means in a nutshell, because you all know there's a bunch of feelings out there, and I'm not sure in all West Indies, culture, if we know how to deal with them, if we know how to recognize. So just want to throw it out there and let me know your thoughts of whether or not we deal or don't deal with our emotional feelings.
Great, lovely. What was the question? Sorry.
I cannot. The question, you ready? The question is, do we deal or we do not deal with our emotional feelings in the West Indies culture, or just as people, as, women in general, do we deal or don't deal with them?
West Indian culture, that's a hard no, ma'am.
Why? Can you elaborate, please, on that? Hard no. I'm sorry.
Well, I feel as though that we are not well in expressing our emotional feelings because it's a trickle-down effect, as our parents do not do a good job of expressing their emotional feelings or managing their emotional feelings.
That's true.
I don't even think they know what it is.
That's what I was going to say. What is emotional feelings? What do you think? Like, if you ask your parents, what are emotional feelings? Do you think that they would know what to answer you?
That's a hard no.
Second hard no for the night. Let's go for a third one. Let's see how many hard no's we can get. I mean, this is serious. I'm sorry, folks, but...
Sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Lisa.
Sorry, I got a little sleep deprivation over here. Okay.
Okay, wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Before we go any further, we're going to go in the sharing corner just for a quick minute to let everybody know what's going on here. So we're laughing and we're giggling here, and we're talking about emotion. Now, Lisa has been blessed with a beautiful prince in her life. She has a nephew. We are overjoyed here, and she right now is with her nephew, and she is feeling a lot of emotions too. Some of it is, she's a little bit tired. She's overjoyed. She's, in amazement. So that's a vibe that she's giving off tonight. And we're very, very happy for that. So that's a hard yes on the emotions that she's feeling right now.
Did your third hard.
Thank you.
We're giggly and giggly. So that's the reason why. It's just the joy that we're feeling.
Thanks, Terry. That's so sweet.
Shout out to the Princess of Mundo.
See, that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah, well, I was waiting for it too. I'm surprised it didn't come in any earlier. No, but I just feel like dealing with your emotions, I think, is a very tough subject. Some people do it well, some people don't. I think culturally, West Indians don't do well with it. I mean, you guys can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. Also, showing a sense of emotion too can be a sense of weakness, showing a sense of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're showing a sense of weakness, it's frowned upon. Culturally. Right. So it's definitely it's a domino effect.
So let me ask you this. Do you think, like with your cousins, right? Because our parents may not. When did you recognize the emotional feelings that you had them, I guess, in a sense, and then able to address it? Where you're like, wait a minute, my parents don't know how to approach this. I need to do better. You know what I mean?
I don't think it was ever addressed. First of all, let's just start with that. That's not something that's addressed. That's just something that personally I recognize, and I have to do the self work. I have to do the work, right? And I have to be self-aware of, how I react to things, how I move, thinking before you react. Yeah, so that's part of doing the work too.
Okay. Have you had the conversation with like your brother and your sister?
No.
Oh. Okay. Well,
but I know, like, amongst us, like, we show each other emotions and affections and things like that. We talk about how we feeling. We just haven't addressed the elephant in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that there are some emotional feelings that you notice about yourself that maybe you guys all have in common, being raised with your parents, like your brother and stuff like that you guys maybe don't want to address, or you feel like, you know what, our parents are who they are, we just don't want to touch that and move on. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure. I think it is a little bit like, okay, they are who they are. I know we have the conversation about doing the work so that we're not following in the same footstep.
That's
like, let's have the conversation. Let's make sure that we stay in contact with one another, make sure, and be there, the support system. Like, I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Terry, how about you?
I think that we all deal with it differently. I know that for me, thinking back, I remember as a teenager, my mother used to say, like, when you talk about your children when they're small, you'll say, oh, well, this baby used to do this and this used to do that. She used to say, for me, she used to say, oh, I remember you used to cry all the time. You was always crying and crying and crying. And that, would you believe, just stopped me from expressing sorrow. So anytime I felt like I wanted to cry as an adult, I would talk myself off the ledge. I'm like, no, girl, you're not crying. You better suck up them tears and not cry. And I always had this, this front on, that everything's all right. So I never knew how to cry.
Wow.
If that makes sense. It took a long, long time. And I just felt that when she said that to me, in my head, how I received that was a bad thing. And I shouldn't have done that. That's a sign of weakness. And I did it to my daughter because I used to say to her, oh, save your tears. What are you crying for? Save your tears save your tears. And when she regurgitated that back to me, I was like, oh, wow, look at how it is passed down, on holding back on that emotion. But something happened to me that I had a breakthrough. And I remember one day I was working at this job and I got so stressed out. I had to take a leave of absence. And there was one day I went to the doctor. And when I went to the doctor, when you go on leave of absence, you go to the doctor and, so they can put you out and stuff like that. And I went into the doctor's office and I sat down and it began. I cried and I cried and I could not stop crying. And I cried. And then that Sunday, I went to church and I cried going to church. I cried all through the service. I cried after the service.
Wow.
The ushers were sitting with me. I'm telling you, it just came. It was just the tears from everything.
Wow.
Yes. That now I'm a little bit better at it. So when I feel the feelings, I let it out. I have my moment and then I pull it back together again. But it is something definitely we have to be mindful of. And in the West Indian culture, like Lisa said, it's shown as a sign of weakness. So if you're showing any signs of, you're crying, you're upset or whatever, what are you crying for? I'll go beat you. So, you're so scared to even show that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Like, I'm going to give you something to cry about.
Right. Exactly. And then when you do cry, what you crying for?
Like, I'm confused.
Confusion. You're very. But Terry, have you ever seen your mom cry?
Funny enough, she cries at a drop of a dime.
She what?
Cries.
She would cry at a drop of a dime.
Wow.
Because she's the type of person that wears her heart on her sleeve. And when her feelings get hurt, she cries at the drop of a dime.
Wow.
Wow.
The reason I say that because I was like, maybe that was something that was passed down to her. So I was just wondering, maybe she didn't know, but that's kind of, I'm sorry, odd, if I'm going to say odd, like
It is. You can say that.
passed down to you that, it's kind of very odd how that.
It's just that how we have to be mindful of what we tell our children, because how it transforms to them, how we may say it, they may receive it something different, and then it goes into their brain, and then they're thinking one way, and and that may not be the intent. So we have to be mindful about how we say these things and how we let them know, and it's okay to show emotion. It really is. Another point though, growing up, when I used to see, like I saw my dad cry one time at a funeral, and God, please do not judge me on this. I thought it was the funniest thing.
Really?
And I'm going to tell you why. Because I thought that for men that they weren't supposed to cry or show.
Oh, same here. Same here. Oh, same here.
So
I think that's something within the Black community that we don't do a good job at.
Exactly. So when I saw him feeling sorry, at the funeral, instead of me going to comfort him, I stood back and I was like, I was like, oh shit, he's like really crying. I was like chuckling. I was like, oh shit. Yes, I was. But it's okay. It's okay to let that out. I mean, crying for a man to cry, whether he is West Indian, American, whatever, okay. There's nothing wrong with letting, because they have emotions. They have emotions.
But I also think the way you reacted is very much like, again, I don't think that it's wrong the way you reacted, because if you've never seen, and if you've been told like men don't cry and you see one cry, you don't know what to do with that. So that comes out too. That's another thing. Because again, if you've never seen something that's like abnormal, your brain's going to be like, well, what the F is going on? Like, that's not normal. So why is he doing that? You know what I mean? So you kind of process, like, why is he crying? Because that don't make no sense as to why, he's crying. But, I mean, you ladies, go ahead.
How do we embrace that, though?
Right. That's
because I do remember, now that you're saying something, Terry, I do remember when I was growing up. Yeah, my dad used to always be like, "Oh, you got to stay in control." So that's equated to you don't show your emotions. You don't show any emotions. You don't cry in front of people. You don't. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Is this another, because I know, and I've heard it before, and maybe you ladies can relate or cannot, but also in the African American community, right, as being Black people, I feel like also our emotion compared to other, what's the word?
Nationalities?
Other nationalities, yes. I was trying to not say. Thank you. Other nationalities is different, right? So when we go to a job or when we go out there, we are also, I feel, are trained, because I remember I've had mentor in the professional world that's told me like, yo, you can't show that many emotion, because of the fact that if you do, you're going to be labeled as your typical Black person with the head rolling, with, oh, there they go, they're loud, they're this, they're that. So then from that aspect to us, like being thrown into the world, you are also told, saying like, hold those emotions, because you don't want to be labeled as another Black person.
That's very true.
Tell me if you guys experienced that, or it was the same for you.
Well, yeah, I actually remember an incident at the job. I don't know. I came back from being out for a couple of days and I was just so frustrated. And I remember Terry came in my office and closed the door and was like, you better get it together. You don't go out there and let them see you. Don't let them go out there and see that. None of that. Those emotions. Get it together. But yeah, it is, especially as a woman, especially as a Black woman working in corporate America. And once you're in management and leadership role, you cannot show any emotions. You better find yourself the closest ladies' room, go in there, handle it out, do what you got to do, and shake it off, and then come back and act like nothing happened. Like you strung like bull.
But you're right though, because I feel like a lot of times, and again, nothing wrong with those nationalities, but it's how it's set up, is the fact that they could go in and act a plump fool and say what they want to say, how they want to say it. And it's like, oh my gosh, does Becky have an emotional issue? Does Becky have I'm using a name out there, but when I say Becky, everybody know what I'm talking about. But I'm just saying, it's like, did she not take her medicine today? Like, what's wrong with Becky?
Let us walk around talking we ain't take no medicine.
Cooler. Exactly. You the top at the water cooler. No, that's why I told Lisa that. And it was more so of, okay, you get it out right here, but when you go out there, you show differently, because we know who we are and we know what we are, and we do have our moment. But for them, it comes off as soon as they tell us something. Mm-hmm. If we cry, we have a moment, is, oh, she can't handle pressure. Mm-hmm. That type of thing.
Yeah,
and that's not safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And for me, I would have to say emotional feelings. I've struggled a little bit growing up with it, only because I've always expressed myself, but it's not finding people to teach you how to properly express yourself, express this emotion.
Oh, that's huge. That's
you know what I mean? Because the thing is, I'm one, like, as a child, and my dad was telling people, like, however it came out for me, it came out. So I wasn't like the one that, if you told me, I feel like between me and my sister, she's the one that would hold the emotion. Me, I'm like, I don't give a really F. I'm coming with like a tornado, whatever emotion's out there. Y'all F it is what it is, and then I'll make the repercussion later, right? So that was me. But then I didn't know later on, wait a minute, like you said, Lisa, is putting yourself in other people's shoes, understanding like, yeah, sometimes you do have to have control of those emotions. You do have to be able to express yourself, because when you do come like a tornado sometimes, people are not listening, because all you're doing is leaving damage, right? So the thing is, it's like sitting down, it's like, okay, I'm feeling angry because, and use your words, right? So I had to learn that my emotion was not bad, but I had to learn how to properly, communicate these emotions that other people could hear, hear what the emotions were, so that they could receive it. And at the same time, I was better able to, like you said, have control over it, because when you don't have control, you can have all the emotion and express it, but if you don't have control over it, then it still, defeats the purpose. And, a lot of times, like you said, I know that I've had people in my family not understand why is she expressing herself that way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm the outcast. I know that I'm an outcast, but when my emotions, because they don't express it the same way, so I know I've been told, like, wait a minute. Like, I remember this incident. I was, I think, like, I don't know, 12? No. Yeah, maybe 11 or 12. And I went somewhere with, like, some family friends or whatever, and me and my sister were sitting at the table, and I was just laughing. Like, I've always been laughing, right? And I remember the adult lady I was with, she was like, why are you laughing? Why are you smiling? Like, I'm a child. Like, I'm just like, it didn't dawn. And then her brother that was with her, he's an adult, he goes, let the girl smile. She got a beautiful smile. Like,
yeah, nice.
But that's what, and the funny thing is, like, that happened to me when I was like maybe 11 or 12, right? And that instant stayed with me because of the fact that whatever her emotional reason, because they were Haitian, so whatever she was feeling, it was like me smiling or laughing did something to her emotion that was like, oh, it's not normal. Right. We're sitting, and I understand we're in a hospital setting or whatever. She was probably going through a lot, but a lot of times, like you said, Tara, people say things to children and you don't realize. But what stood out to me was, like, I felt like God always placed people like her brother to say, yo, bite the fuck off. She's a child. She can smile if she wants to. Like, what's wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? To show you that it's okay to, let, like, don't put your emotional baggage also on other people. Right?
That's what they do. That's what they do.
They do. And like for me, like I know with my son, I'm always, because of that, I always make sure that he's aware of how he's feeling. So the thing is, I always have the conversation with him of where are you with your emotion? Because even though he's a male, black male, I need him to be aware of what his emotions are. So can't nobody tell him how he's supposed to feel. So he's very confident in if he's not feeling something or if he's feeling this way, you know what I'm saying? He's aware of it and he communicates. And I know there's been time when, I'm gonna put it on blast. I know with his father sometimes it's hard because, again, going back to males are not supposed to express certain emotional feelings. So there's time my son may express, like to me, he expresses his feeling, but with his dad, he doesn't express it the same way.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I feel like, well, and he's like, no, the vibe is different. Like, he's like, I could tell you anything. I could tell you everything. And it don't matter what the vibe is, whether I like it or not, I'm open to receiving whatever the feeling is. And I feel like it's opposite. Like if your parents don't want to accept those feelings, then like you said, Terry, it's like, don't cry because they don't want to deal with that. Right? They don't want to deal with whatever that emotion is. Like, no, because I haven't dealt with that. So you want me to help you deal with that? No, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's what it is a lot of times. And that's why we have to, like you said, Lisa, do the work. Don't do the work. It will continue. You know what I'm saying? That emotion will still be there. It will still continue. And you do have to do the work. Because I know anger in my family, as much as they don't like to admit it, anger is a big thing in my family.
Oh, same here.
Yeah. And they don't deal with it. And I had to be like, again, it's a brick. So I had to be like, I don't want to carry that brick.
Yeah.
It's too heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy.
You could carry it, right? If you want to carry it, you could carry it. But the thing is, the hard part for me was not understanding why they were angry. So I'm asking the question, I know you're angry, so it's okay for you to be angry. What's making you angry and what can we do to let it go? Right? I'm that kind of child. Right?
They're not ready for that. That means she got a whooping after that statement.
I got licks and licks.
Yep. Yep. They don't want to deal with that.
They will shut you down. And I don't understand, like for me, in my mind, I get it because I have to accept them. But for me, I don't understand, like, if you are able to have a brick, right? And all you have to do is like talk about it. Because I feel like sometimes if you just talk about it, you can let go of the brick, right? And it's like, nah, they don't. I'm like, no. And I don't understand that, but I mean, those are, you know, the emotion. But I also feel like in the African American, so comparing our similarities and differences in African American culture, I feel like they also carry emotional baggage. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Based off, let's talk about slavery, based off a lot of things that's happening today, you know what I'm saying, and what we're dealing with today. I feel like there's a lot, and I feel like it's the same thing. They also are you know, trained like, yo, you know, express your emotion. I had a friend of mine, and they're probably gonna know who I'm talking about.
Oh, snap.
I'm not gonna say no name, but they say like they have a son, right? And they said growing up with them, you know, they were trained to be tough. And the thing is, when he had his son, he was trying to like pass on the same thing, like, oh, you should be tough, and realize like, yo, that didn't work for him, his son, right? His son is not that, tough. You know what I'm saying? His son is more of calm, you know, like I ain't got all that.
Laid back.
He said like he had to realize the same emotional, you know, things that how he grew up didn't work for his son. So it became like a conflict for him to reprogram himself to be like, yo, wait a minute. My son and this generation, they don't have to be those black men that are like, oh, you know what I'm saying, tough and why you step on my shoes and I'm gonna beat you up. Like, that stuff don't work. But, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, let me ask you this question, though, Bertie. Do you think that your son is afraid to express his feelings around his dad?
I'm going to answer it the best way. Because again, I have those conversations with him, right? So the way that it was told back to me, for me, because I've been having this conversation with him since he was young, right? So for me, however, I'm one of those people, as long as he's respectful, he can express whatever he wants to me. Like, it don't matter what words he uses, how he says it. That's how he feels. Come out and say how you feel, because then I know what's in your brain, right? Every age level. But I feel like with his father, sometimes that old school tradition is in him, that he has to say it a certain way. He can't use certain words, or if he uses certain words, it's like, well, you know, like, and I'm like, nah, because that's how he feels. So you can't train or teach somebody how to say what they feel. You don't control that. So if I'm saying to you, I'm upset or something is unfair, you can't tell me, oh, that's not the right word. That's how I feel. So I had to be like, wait a minute. And I think that's sometimes the block, because they want you to also express it the way they want you to. So you have to say it the right way. You have to say the phrase, like, it has to line up. And I'm like, nah. So I think that's where sometimes the conflict is, and the vibe is that my son has to make sure, like, how he approaches it. For me, somebody shouldn't have to think about how to approach you with their feelings if that's how they feel, and you're supposed to be trusted to be like, yo, you understand what I'm saying? If they're respectful. I'm not saying being belligerent, I'm not saying being disrespectful, but if you care for me and I'm coming to you and I'm like, yo, this is how I feel, whether you understand it or not, you should be able to listen, and then we move past to have the conversation. And I think that's where sometimes it falls short, but they're working on it. I have to train my son to learn how to deal with that, unfortunately. And that's a good thing for him.
Exactly.
That's a good thing for him.
It's not a bad thing. It is definitely not a bad thing. But it's all about, like Lisa said, you have to do the work. You have to stand up. This goes back to, and I can't stress it enough, standing up in your truth. You have to break the cycle. Something is wrong here. This is not right. So how do I break the cycle? Sometimes doing it, you're going against the grain. You know, and people don't want to do that. So it's so embedded just to go along with the program. Sometimes you got to be like, well, I'm not going down that road there, and this is wrong, and I'm not doing this. So this is what I'm going to do instead, and you got to go against the current.
I think, B, you also said an excellent thing as well. You said to your son, you could express yourself as long as it's not disrespectful. Now, I bet you anything that if our parents had that conversation with us, everyone would be so much further along. But the thing is, I don't think they know how to themselves to express those emotions and just express it that way. You know, it's like, oh, just deal with it, because probably that's what they were told. Just deal with it.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to mention is, so there's another flip side to it, because and I'm going to talk from the, on a serious note though, from the West Indies culture, is the fact that I feel like when you don't allow your children to express themselves, there's a lot of things that happen to them, whether it's abuse, physically, emotionally, mentally, that you miss out on, because of the fact that they don't know how to come to you. So now they're getting all this abuse, even from being a kid, right? And when then they grow up, they get into this abusive relationship, and you sitting there wondering why. And it's like, what do you mean, why? I mean this, because the thing is, you didn't allow me to express when I was getting abused over there by Uncle so-and-so, or by Auntie so-and-so, or all this, saying all this stuff, you know, like, oh, look at this one, or stuff like that. Like you say, the criticism that in our culture, sometimes they say stuff, not understanding, like, okay, y'all may think it's a joke, but you don't know what Tara was saying, how that affects that person, right? So when they said, oh, you may be like, I know one of the things is like in the Haitian culture, right? In the Haitian culture, like if it's like weight is a big thing, right? Your weight, right? So they're not afraid to be like, oh, when you skinny, you're too skinny. When you gain weight, you gain weight, right? So they just express whatever they want to not understand. Like, wait,
somebody always got to say something about it. I'd be like, damn. Is there nothing else to talk about?
Right. So that thing is, they don't know, like, yo, that emotion. But can you go? And the thing is, you don't want to be disrespectful to your elders and be like, what the fuck you talking about? You weigh a ton of too. Like, you coming to me and you looking at them. But again, that's a break. Like, I'm not allowed to express that emotion. That would be disrespectful. But I want to tell you something about yourself too. You
looking like a poppy show.
Yes. So at the end of it, ladies, I think some of the takeaways is your emotions are your emotions. Recognize them, deal with them, do the work, and don't carry that damn brick because it's not met. It's part of who you are. Embrace every single part of who you are, whether it comes out. Just learn to go through it and embrace it. And that's it. Thank you for listening. Let us know if y'all got some tricks to help us besides alcohol, Besides alcohol.
That seems to be the go-to, though. That seems to be the go-to. That's a problem in itself.
That is. And that's it, folks. Until next time. Thanks for listening.
And we're out.
À la prochaine, le peuple. Thank you for joining us this week on Unfiltered Limin with BLT. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and join our Facebook page at Unfiltered Limin with BLT. As always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh, exciting content. See you next Thursday, same time, same station. Unfiltered Limin with BLT is edited and produced by Unfiltered Limin with BLT.